Have you ever looked at a giant oak tree, a buzzing bee, or even your own hand and wondered, what's all this stuff made of? Well, I'm here to tell you it's something so small you can't even see it without a powerful microscope. But it's the most important building block in all of biology. We're talking about cells. C-E-L-L-S. Cells are the fundamental, the most basic, the number one unit of all living things. They are like the tiny bricks that build a gigantic house. Every living thing you can think of, from the smallest bacterium to the biggest blue whale, is made of one or more of these incredible little structures. They're not just bricks, though. They're bustling little cities, each one performing thousands of jobs every second to keep an organism alive. Think about it this way. If you were building with toy blocks, you could make a car, a castle, or a spaceship. But the basic unit is always the block. Life works in a very similar way. The diversity of life we see around us, from the slimy slug to the soaring eagle, is all assembled from these fundamental cellular units. Each cell has a specific job to do. In your body, you have nerve cells that send messages, muscle cells that help you move, and skin cells that protect you. It's an amazing system of teamwork on a microscopic scale. Understanding cells is the first step to understanding all of life itself. It's science and it's awesome. So, what exactly is a cell? It's a tiny, membrane-wrapped package of life. Inside this package, you'll find everything needed to carry out the processes of life, making energy, getting rid of waste, and even making more cells. It's a self-contained factory, office, and power plant all rolled into one. Some organisms, like bacteria, are just a single cell doing everything by itself. But in complex creatures like us humans, trillions of cells work together in a coordinated symphony. They form tissues, which form organs, which form organ systems, and ultimately, they form you. It's a spectacular hierarchy of organization, all starting with that one humble, powerful cell. Before we dive deeper into this microscopic universe, just take a moment to appreciate this. The very breath you are taking right now is being processed by cells in your lungs. The thoughts you are thinking are zipping through your brain cells. The food you ate for lunch is being broken down by cells in your stomach and intestines. You are a walking, talking, thinking community of about 37 trillion cells. Exploring the world of the cell isn't just a science lesson, it's a journey into the very essence of who we are and how we work. So, let's get ready to zoom in and unlock the secrets of life's most amazing invention, the cell. Way back in the 1600s, before we had fancy high-definition cameras or smartphones, scientists were a curious bunch who had to build their own tools. One of these scientists was an Englishman named Robert Hooke. In 1665, Hooke built a primitive microscope. It wasn't super powerful by today's standards, but it opened up a whole new world. He looked at everything he could get his hands on, but one of the most famous things he examined was a thin slice of cork, which comes from the bark of an oak tree. What he saw amazed him. The cork was made up of thousands of tiny empty boxes, all packed together like a honeycomb. They reminded him of the small rooms or cells where monks lived in a monastery. So he called them cells. Now, what Robert Hooke saw were actually the dead cell walls of the cork plant, but he was the very first person to see and name them. He opened the door. After Hooke, another scientist named Antony van Leeuwenhoek, a Dutch shopkeeper, built even better microscopes. He was the first to see living cells. He looked at pond water and saw tiny little creatures swimming around, which he called animalcules. He also looked at the gunk on his teeth, yes, really, and saw bacteria. For the first time, humanity realized there was an entire world of living things too small for our eyes to see. These early discoveries were mind-blowing and set the stage for one of the most important ideas in all of biology. Over the next couple of hundred years, scientists kept studying these cells, and they started to notice a pattern. In the 1830s, two German scientists, Matthias Schleiden, who studied plants, and Theodor Schwann, who studied animals, put their ideas together. Schleiden realized all plants were made of cells, and Schwann realized all animals were made of cells. They proposed that cells were the basic building blocks of all life. This was a huge deal. It united the study of plants and animals under one big idea. Think of it as the grand unifying theory of biology at the time. It was a simple yet profound observation that changed science forever. Their work, along with a later contribution from another scientist named Rudolf Virchow, led to what we now call the cell theory. It has 3 main points, and they are super important. First, all living organisms are composed of 1 or more cells. Second, the cell is the most basic unit of life. And third, the part Virchow added, all cells arise from pre-existing cells. This means cells don't just pop out of nowhere, they have to divide from another cell. This theory is the foundation of modern biology. It tells us where life comes from and what it's made of. It's all about the cells. Okay, so we know all life is made of cells, but are all cells the same? Not at all. Think of it like vehicles. You have simple basic vehicles like a go-kart, and you have complex fancy vehicles like a luxury bus with a kitchen and a bathroom. In the world of cells, we have 2 main types, prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. The biggest difference between them is how they store their genetic information, their DNA. It's all about organization. The name gives us a clue. Pro means before and karyon means nucleus, so prokaryote means before a nucleus. Eu means true, so eukaryote means true nucleus. Prokaryotic cells are the go-karts of the cellular world. They are simple, small, and they were the first type of life to evolve on Earth. Their defining feature is that they do not have a nucleus. Their DNA, which is usually a single circular loop, just floats around freely inside the cell in a region called the nucleoid. They also don't have any of those other fancy membrane-wrapped compartments or organelles that we'll talk about later. They are lean, mean, living machines. The most common examples of prokaryotes are bacteria and another group called archaea. They are everywhere, in the soil, in the ocean, and even inside your gut, helping you digest food. Eukaryotic cells, on the other hand, are the luxury buses. They are much larger and way more complex than prokaryotic cells. Their most important feature is that they have a true nucleus, a special compartment surrounded by a membrane that holds and protects the cell's DNA. This is a huge upgrade. It's like having a secure vault for your most important blueprints. Eukaryotic cells are also packed with many other membrane-bound organelles, each with a specific job, like a power plant, a factory, and a waste disposal system. This organization allows them to be much more specialized. All plants, animals, fungi like mushrooms, and protists like amoebas are made of eukaryotic cells. So let's recap the main differences. Prokaryotes, no nucleus, DNA floats in the cytoplasm, no membrane-bound organelles, and they are always single-celled organisms. Eukaryotes have a true nucleus, have lots of different organelles wrapped in membranes, and they can be single-celled like yeast, or make up large multicellular organisms like you. This split between prokaryotes and eukaryotes represents the biggest and most ancient division in the history of life on our planet. It's a fundamental distinction that helps us classify and understand every living thing. It's science in action. Now let's take a tour inside one of those complex eukaryotic cells, the luxury bus model. Imagine the cell is a bustling city. It needs a border, a government, roads, and different buildings to get things done. These buildings and structures inside the cell are called organelles, which means little organs. Each organelle has a specific job that helps keep the cell alive and functioning. First up is the city border, the plasma membrane. This is a thin, flexible layer that surrounds the entire cell. It's like a security gate that controls what comes in and what goes out. It's incredibly important for protecting the cell and maintaining a stable internal environment. Once you get past the plasma membrane, you're inside the cytoplasm. This isn't just empty space. It's a jelly-like substance that fills the entire cell and surrounds all the organelles. Think of it as the air, ground, and water of our cell city. It's mostly water, but it's also packed with salts, proteins, and other molecules. Everything that happens inside the cell, all the chemical reactions, all the transport, happens within the cytoplasm. It provides the medium for all the little organelles to float in and do their work. It's the general workspace of the cell, where the real action takes place. Now for the most important building in the city, the nucleus. This is the city hall or the control center. The nucleus is a large, often spherical organelle that contains the cell's genetic material, the DNA. Your DNA is like the master blueprint for everything the cell does, what it looks like, what its job is, and how it reproduces. The nucleus keeps this precious information safe and sound, protected by its own double-layered membrane called the nuclear envelope. It controls all the activities of the cell by sending out instructions in the form of RNA molecules. Without the nucleus, the cell wouldn't know what to do. Finally, let's talk about a structure found in some cells but not others, the cell wall. This is a feature of plant cells, fungi and bacteria, but not animal cells. The cell wall is a tough, rigid layer located outside the plasma membrane. Think of it as an extra wall built around our cell city for added protection and support. In plants, the cell wall is made of a strong material called cellulose. It's what gives plants their structure and allows them to stand up straight. It prevents the cell from bursting when it takes in too much water. So, while animal cells are soft and flexible, plant cells are strong and boxy thanks to their amazing cell walls. Every city needs power, right? In our cell city, the power plants are the mitochondria, singular, mitochondrion. These are amazing bean-shaped organelles that are responsible for cellular respiration. That's a fancy way of saying they take the food you eat, like sugars, and the oxygen you breathe, and convert them into a usable form of energy for the cell. This energy is stored in a special molecule called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. ATP is like the cell's battery, or currency. Every time the cell needs to do something, move, build something, or transport materials, it spends ATP. So, the more energy a cell needs, like a muscle cell, the more mitochondria it will have. Now, what does a city do with all that power? It runs its factories. The factories of the cell are the ribosomes. Ribosomes are tiny little structures, much smaller than most other organelles, and they have a huge job. They build proteins. Proteins are the workers and the machines of the cell. They do almost everything. Following the instructions sent from the DNA in the nucleus, ribosomes link together building blocks called amino acids to create long protein chains. Some ribosomes float freely in the cytoplasm, making proteins that will be used right there. Others are attached to a network of membranes, which we'll get to next. That network is called the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short. The ER is a massive interconnected system of folded membranes that spreads throughout the cytoplasm. Think of it as the city's highway system and industrial park combined. There are two types of ER. The rough ER is studded with ribosomes, which gives it its rough appearance. The proteins made by these ribosomes are either sent out of the cell or inserted into the cell's membranes. The rough ER helps fold and modify these proteins to make sure they're ready for their jobs. It's kind of like a factory assembly line and quality control station. The other type is the smooth ER. It's called smooth because it doesn't have any ribosomes on it. The smooth ER has different jobs depending on the cell type. Its main functions include making lipids, fats, and steroid hormones, and also detoxifying harmful substances. For example, your liver cells have a lot of smooth ER to help break down toxins and drugs. So the ER, in both its rough and smooth forms, is a critical manufacturing and transportation hub. It works closely with the ribosomes to produce and ship the essential molecules that keep the cell and you running smoothly. After proteins and lipids are made in the ER, they're not quite ready to go to their final destination. They need to be sorted, packaged, and labeled. This is the job of the Golgi apparatus, also known as the Golgi complex or Golgi body. Think of the Golgi as the cell's post office or shipping center. It's a stack of flattened, membrane-bound sacs called cisternae. Little transport bubbles, called vesicles, pinch off from the ER and carry the newly made molecules to the Golgi. Here, the molecules are further modified, sorted, and packaged into new vesicles for delivery. The Golgi apparatus is incredibly precise. It reads the molecular labels on the proteins and lipids and sorts them based on where they need to go. Some vesicles will travel to the plasma membrane and release their contents outside the cell. This is how hormones or enzymes are secreted. Other vesicles will fuse with the plasma membrane itself, delivering new proteins and lipids to repair or grow the membrane. And some vesicles become specialized organelles themselves, like the lysosomes. The Golgi is the master of logistics, ensuring that the right products get to the right place at the right time. Without it, the cell would be in a state of chaos. Now, let's talk about that cleanup crew, the lysosomes. Lysosomes are small spherical vesicles that bud off from the Golgi apparatus. They are the cell's recycling center and garbage disposal system. Each lysosome is filled with powerful digestive enzymes that can break down all sorts of things: old, worn-out organelles, food particles that the cell has ingested, and even viruses or bacteria that have invaded the cell. When an organelle is old and stops working properly, the cell can enclose it in a membrane and fuse it with a lysosome. The enzymes then go to work, breaking the old organelle down into its basic building blocks, which the cell can then reuse. One more important organelle to mention, especially in plant cells, is the vacuole. In animal cells, vacuoles are generally small and temporary, used for storage or transport. But in a mature plant cell, there is a massive central vacuole that can take up to 90% of the cell's volume. This central vacuole has several key jobs. It stores water, nutrients, and waste products. But most importantly, it's filled with water, which pushes against the cell wall. This pressure, called turgor pressure, is what helps support the plant and keep it rigid. When a plant doesn't get enough water, the central vacuoles lose water, the turgor pressure drops, and the plant wilts. It's like a water-based skeleton for the plant cell. So, we have these amazing complex cells. But where do they come from? Remember Rudolf Virchow's rule? All cells come from pre-existing cells. Cells don't just appear, they have to divide. Cell division is how organisms grow, repair themselves, and reproduce. There are two main types of cell division, and they have very different purposes. The first is called mitosis. Mitosis is the process of cell division that results in two identical daughter cells, each with the exact same number of chromosomes as the parent cell. This is the type of cell division your body uses for growth and repair. Think about it. You started as a single cell, a fertilized egg. Through trillions and trillions of mitotic divisions, you grew into the person you are today. Every day your body is still using mitosis. When you get a cut on your skin, mitosis is what creates new skin cells to heal the wound. Your hair and nails grow because of mitosis. Your body is constantly replacing old red blood cells with new ones, all through mitosis. The goal of mitosis is to make perfect copies, to ensure that every new cell has the exact same genetic instructions. It's a process of duplication and cloning that keeps your body running and maintained. The second type of cell division is called meiosis. Meiosis is a special type of division that is only used for one purpose, to produce sex cells, like sperm in males and eggs in females. These cells are also called gametes. The goal of meiosis is very different from mitosis. Instead of creating identical copies, meiosis creates cells that have half the number of chromosomes as the parent cell. Why? Because when a sperm cell and an egg cell combine during fertilization, they restore the full number of chromosomes, creating a new, genetically unique individual. Meiosis is all about creating genetic diversity. This process of shuffling genes during meiosis is why you are a unique mix of your parents' traits, and not a perfect clone of either one. During meiosis, the chromosomes swap pieces of DNA in a process called crossing over, creating new combinations of genes that never existed before. This genetic variation is incredibly important for the survival of a species. It allows populations to adapt to changing environments over time. So, to sum it up, mitosis is for growth and repair, making identical cells. Meiosis is for sexual reproduction, making unique gametes with half the genetic information. Both are essential for the continuation of life. A cell can't be a sealed box. It has to interact with its environment. It needs to take in nutrients like oxygen and sugar, and it needs to get rid of waste products like carbon dioxide. All of this traffic happens across the plasma membrane, the cell's border patrol. The movement of substances across this membrane happens in a few different ways. The simplest way is called diffusion. Diffusion is the natural tendency of particles to spread out from an area where they are highly concentrated to an area where they are less concentrated. It doesn't require any energy from the cell. Imagine you spray some air freshener in one corner of a room. At first, the smell is very strong in that corner, but over time the scent particles will spread out evenly until you can smell it everywhere in the room. That's diffusion. The same thing happens with small molecules like oxygen and carbon dioxide. When you breathe in, there's a high concentration of oxygen in your lungs and a low concentration in your blood cells. So, oxygen naturally diffuses from your lungs into your blood cells. At the same time, your cells have a high concentration of waste carbon dioxide, which diffuses out of the cells and into your lungs to be exhaled. A special type of diffusion involving water is called osmosis. Osmosis is simply the diffusion of water across a selectively permeable membrane, like the cell membrane. Water will always move from an area where there is a lot of water and fewer solutes like salt or sugar to an area where there is less water and more solutes. The cell membrane lets water pass through easily, but blocks larger solute molecules. This movement of water is crucial for keeping cells hydrated and balanced. It's why drinking salt water is dangerous. It would pull water out of your cells. But what if a cell needs to move something against the concentration gradient? What if it needs to pull in a substance that is already more concentrated inside the cell than outside? For this, the cell needs to use energy. This process is called active transport. The cell membrane has special protein pumps that act like little machines. They grab onto specific molecules on one side of the membrane and, using energy from ATP, push them to the other side. This is like pushing a boulder uphill. It takes work. Your nerve cells use active transport to pump ions across their membranes, which is essential for sending nerve signals. So, we've traveled deep inside the microscopic world of the cell. We've seen how they were discovered, the different types that exist, and the incredible little organelles that work together like a well-oiled machine. We've learned how they grow, divide, and control everything that moves in and out. But why does all of this matter to you in your everyday life? Well, understanding cells is fundamental to understanding health and disease. When you get sick with the flu, it's because a virus has hijacked your cell's machinery to make more viruses. Cancer is a disease of uncontrolled cell division, mitosis gone wild. Knowing about cells helps us develop medicines and treatments. Antibiotics, for example, are designed to target and destroy bacterial cells or prokaryotes without harming our own human cells, which are eukaryotes. They often work by attacking the bacteria's cell wall, a structure our cells don't have. Understanding how the cell membrane works helps scientists design drugs that can get inside a cell to do their job. Every time you get a vaccine, visit a doctor, or take medicine, you are benefiting from centuries of scientific research into the world of the cell. It's practical life-saving science. Let's think about the world around us. Understanding osmosis and turgor pressure in plant cells explains why plants need water to stand tall and why they wilt. It helps farmers and gardeners know how to care for their crops. Knowing about cellular respiration in mitochondria explains why we need to eat food and breathe oxygen to have energy. It's the basic biology behind nutrition and fitness. Every part of biology, from ecology to genetics to medicine, is built upon the foundation of cell biology. It connects the smallest parts of life to the biggest planetary systems. So, the next time you look at a tree, a pet, or your own reflection in the mirror, remember the trillions of tiny, bustling cities working non-stop to make it all possible. The cell is the true secret of life. It's a world of complexity, elegance, and incredible power, all happening on a scale too small to see. Learning about it isn't just for a science test. It's about understanding the very nature of what it means to be alive. And that, I think you'll agree, is pretty cool. Science is all around us, and it starts with the cell.